All right, welcome back, Sun Warriors. It is Monday, March 21, 22, 23rd. Let's check that date. It is Monday, March 23rd, 2020. Today, I'm going to be sitting down with Mr. Barnett, history and psychology teacher from Solorio Academy High School, and we're going to talk about people's different reactions to crises and catastrophes throughout history, as well as the psychology of it, not just on a big scale, but on a personal and individual scale. Mr. Barnett will also give us some recommendations for what he's reading, what he's listening to, and what he's watching, and at the end of the video, he's going to try to draw a pig in 30 seconds or less. I had a great time sitting down with Mr. Barnett. I've got one bad thing to say though. There is unfortunately a watermark on this video because I was too cheap to buy the full cam stream service that I was technically supposed to for my Skype calls. Don't worry, we're going to be back on Zoom. Get that watermark off of there for the future episodes. I am not technically a YouTuber. Anyways, hope everyone's doing well out there. As you know, we're not going to be back till at least April 21st. In the meantime, I'm open for all requests. Let me know who you want to have on the show. On Tuesday, we're going to have Mr. Gandolfi. So if you've got questions for Mr. Gandolfi, get them over here before 1 p.m. today so I can deliver them to him. Great. We are recording. Everybody, welcome. We're here live with Mr. Barnett. Mr. Barnett, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I think probably a lot of you know me. Many of you had me as a teacher. You're all juniors are going to be seeing this, right, Mr. Buse?
Yeah.
So many of them
the
had
goal.
me last year. Many of them will have me next year for AP Psych if they are taking it. So I teach, for those who don't know, I teach U.S. History and AP Psych at Solorio.
Great. So obviously you're not at school right now. We are on, it's Friday, March 20th.
Indeed.
Talk to us about your current office space, or is this a classroom? What are we considering this?
I am in my kitchen right now, actually.
It explains the paper towel holder.
Yes, indeed. This is probably where I've been spending the majority of my time because I've been cooking a lot, trying to keep busy in these uncharted territory times that we live in. But yeah, I've been at home most of the time. It's me and my girlfriend here and her cat. She works in a restaurant, so she's been out for a while now too. So yeah, we're hanging out here, doing our best to stay busy.
Is the cat the friendly type of cat that likes to, or are we talking about the cat?
Friendly.
Okay, because there are two types of cats. There are cats that you see every day, and cats that run away and you'd see once a year.
No, he's a house cat. He's I don't want to put him on blast on out here on the airwaves.
And this is public. This is not an unlisted YouTube channel.
Yeah, no, I know. So he's a more sedentary cat. He's a very amiable cat. He's as far as cats go, very affectionate. So he's a good roommate to have.
So he's more of a dog than a cat sometimes.
Yeah, he has a lot of dog tendencies.
Okay, no offense to people who like cats, but
yeah,
I'm
more of a dog person, and I really like the cat. So
there you go. It's on the record. So what are you doing to stay sharp during this slowdown?
I'm trying to do a lot. I'm trying to stay really busy, coming up with different things for myself to do. So I already mentioned I've been cooking a lot. I like to eat, and I like to cook. So I've been doing that a lot, experimenting with different recipes and stuff to try to be a little creative. Been doing some work. I'm doing a lot of reading, things both for pleasure and that I think I could hopefully use in my classroom someday when we get back there. I've been trying to stay active. I've been trying to exercise every day. I just got done doing some yoga right before we got on here. What else am I doing? Some personal creative projects, some creative writing stuff that I really like to do and don't have a lot of sort of time or bandwidth to do during the school year. So I'm trying to do that too. And I'm also really trying hard to catch up with and sort of stay in touch with friends. Most of my good friends live all around the country now. Very few of them still live in Chicago. So this is, since we're all at home and have a lot of free time on our hands, this is giving us a chance to do what you and I are doing right now, to video chat and catch up and see how everybody's doing. So that's been nice too.
Yeah. And then in terms of that creative writing,
Mm.
are we talking like a multi-series fantasy epic creative writing, or are you doing a political thriller? I know you used to be involved in politics,
I did used to be involved
so
in
a little
politics.
bit of
Yeah,
West Wing,
it's definitely not West Wing.
House of
That's a little
Cards.
too real for me right now. I don't know. It's early days, so I don't have anything like right now. I'm doing a lot of like thinking about like characters and stuff like that.
Nice.
I every time I like go to like start to do plot stuff, I realize that I need to do more like background work, like
Yes.
thinking about like the world I'm building
Yeah.
and the people in it. So it's very slow going, but it's a nice like outlet for me, and it feels very escapist in some ways, which is right now is kind of something I need sometimes.
So when you win the Pulitzer Prize, they're gonna come
Uh-huh.
dig this video up. They'll interview me.
Yeah,
I'll get in the New York Times saying, "Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and this is the spot you'll say this is the spot because I'm doing it right here. So it'll
right,
be like
right beneath your
we
paper
have
towel
video
holder."
of him doing it beneath the paper towel roll. Exactly.
So great. Now I was thinking, when we were running through who to bring on the show, I thought, who has a mix between being able to talk about how we record the past, how we record
Mhm.
human interactions on a big scale, and how we individually react to crazy stuff that happens.
Sure.
And even without me saying it, you'd said, "Oh, I'd love to talk about responses to crises," and wrote in my memory it was 7 paragraphs in Gmail that I did not read. But so right now with what's going on, this is something every day. It's changing. Right now, my messages are blowing up because it looks like Pritzker just ordered a shelter in place, and so every day something that seemed kind of impossible to happen the day before happens.
It's happening. Yeah.
So talk me through what trends do we see in terms of how people react to catastrophes,
Sure.
crises, fear, things like that?
Yeah, so I think so as you alluded to, I think I'll draw on both the subjects I teach, history and psychology for this. I think if we think about how we as human beings respond when we're faced with really challenging times like we're facing with right now, I think one thing to think about is so psychologically there's a part of our brain that is really like a deep within our brains, which controls two things when it becomes active. It's called the amygdala, and it controls both our fear response and our aggression response. So if you are scared, your amygdala revs up in your brain and allows you to feel fear. In that same exact time as you are feeling fear, because it also controls aggression, it's revving up and also facilitating you to be more aggressive. That's why many people lash out when they feel threatened. And so this is a time right now when we feel threatened, right? In a lot of ways. Either if you're not threatened about your own health, you're certainly, maybe worried about getting groceries because the lines at the grocery stores are crazy. It's hard to get tortillas right now, right? We're stuck inside. So I think that when we are faced with troubling times like this, there's a natural inclination as fear builds up to also let sort of our lashing out at each other build up. And we have to be mindful of that. And the good news is that while we have that part of our brain that does that, that part of our brain is really stupid in a lot of ways. So like that part of our brain looks very similar to like a mouse's,
Okay.
an animal that's way less smart than us, right? But our brains are different from mice in that we have a very complex stuff built all around that lets us do really high level thinking and lets us push back on the like gut reaction to be aggressive or fearful that we have in a way that a mouse's brain doesn't allow it to be. And so we need to sort of turn on that part of our brains and recognize that these feelings, these emotions we're feeling are normal responses to crazy times that we're living in. But at the same time, we shouldn't give in to those things. I think to speak now to history, we see that coming out in things like the last time we had a major health crisis that is in any way comparable to what we're living through right now was over 100 years ago,
Right.
in the early 1900s. Some people probably read about that when we had a Spanish flu outbreak in this country, right? And so that disease outbreak was even worse than the one we're living through now, both because we had less strong medicine than we do now 100 years later, and also because the disease itself was a lot worse. And so in that time, right, there was a lot of people started looking for what social psychologists call scapegoats, which are people to blame. And a lot of times when we do that, we look for people outside our own groups to blame, right? So it was called the Spanish flu, but it didn't come from Spain. They called it the
Right.
Spanish flu because there was a lot of anti-Spaniard sentiment in the United States at that time, right? So
Do they
that was,
know? Do they know where it came from?
I think it came from like Kentucky or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't something that originated in the place they
So
said it was.
so it's just people were kind of saying, I don't like this thing. I don't like this thing too. So I'll name them after each other.
Exactly.
So if I
Correct.
like ate a bad piece of pizza and I called it like Chicago Cubs pizza
Yes,
or
that
something
would be
like
the
that,
exact
yeah.
same thing.
Even though I bought it at Comiskey Park or whatever they call
Yeah,
now at the White Sox
exactly.
Stadium. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that we see that starting, unfortunately, to happen now. You know, I think maybe some people who are really active on Twitter and following politics have
Mm-hmm.
seen that a lot of our political leaders are calling it not the coronavirus, but the Chinese virus,
Right.
because it did originate in China, but no one most of us call it coronavirus, not Chinese virus. The fact that they're intentionally changing that, you can see there's a picture from a press conference Donald Trump gave a couple days ago where he had his notes in a binder, and a
Mm-hmm.
reporter kind of snuck around to the side and took a picture of the binder, and
Okay.
he had crossed out coronavirus and written in Chinese, so that when he was giving his message, when he was delivering to the cameras, instead of saying coronavirus, he said Chinese virus. So I would say, to me, what it seems like people who say Chinese virus instead of coronavirus are doing is they're just like they did back then with the Spanish flu. They're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for a way to blame this on other people. That's playing to that sort of activity of that amygdala, then that inclination we all have to sort of blame others and act aggressively towards others.
Yeah,
We gotta be careful of that.
Out of fear and aggression. It's interesting because you're saying that we as individuals, as little people stuck in their basements or in their kitchens, have amygdalas, but you're kind of speaking to like a collective amygdala as a whole nation. So you said earlier, so we got to figure out ways to turn that off, and luckily we have them. You make it seem like it's a pretty simple thing to do. So how do you turn that off though? How do you govern that?
I think that that's a great question, and unfortunately, it isn't simple. It's really hard, right? It's really hard when you are feeling like human beings are all, even those of us who feel like we are the most logical people, right? The least ruled by emotion. We're all built to make decisions based on emotion, not on like logical facts. That's just how our brains operate. And so I think the most important thing that you can do is what I've learned over the course of my adult life is when you are feeling emotions about something, just name them for yourself, right? So like, I am feeling scared right now about coronavirus. Like just saying that to yourself can really remind yourself, because that engages the smart part of your brain that is able to be like, whoa, okay, you're scared, so it's normal that you would be maybe not thinking totally rationally, right? Even if you don't name that, even then you run the risk of giving over to it in some way, and that's a thing that we all do all the time, and we just have to work hard to not do it. And I think also to make sure that we are being mindful of the most extreme examples, like someone calling it Chinese virus, or unfortunately I've been seeing some things on social media this week of Chinese American people telling stories about really racist things that they're encountering from others. Don't recognize that that's happening, and don't give into that, and be willing to be an upstander, not a bystander, to use words that a lot of our students have heard.
Right. And that's a challenge at a time when our whole routine of how we interact with people has been completely upended.
Yeah.
And really now, like it, hate it, love it, despise it, social media really is kind of the media of interaction at this point, and so it's you can't just kind of put it off to the side and pretend well that's not real life at this point. Which I know I often try to do. I say whatever's happened on Chat, Snap, or Instagram, like those aren't real things.
But they are, and the things that you are reading, even if you're joking about it, right? Like even if you yourself right now are tweeting like a joke about the Chinese virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you yourself right now, even if you don't actually think that it should be called that, or you recognize, yeah, that's a little bit not okay, but like, we got to laugh in these hard times. Like, even doing that can if you do it time after time after time, even doing that can start to trick your brain into actually buying into it, right? Our
Right.
brains are really adaptable, and they change constantly based on
Right.
the things we think and the ways we behave.
Right. And so we're kind of feeding into that cultural amygdala
Yes,
when we do
correct.
that, even if our intent's not to do that.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
Look at that, history and psychology.
Melding them.
On a similar note, and this one comes from students, both direct requests that I've received for this show specifically, and just in terms of what students are always asking me about. That is conspiracy theories. And so, it's amazing. I think if I ask people to define what is a conspiracy theory, I mean, I don't even think I could define what makes something a conspiracy theory.
Right.
But there are obviously some conspiracy theories around coronavirus, such as I've heard from students. Oh, I've heard this from lots of people. I shouldn't put this on students. It's a weapon released by North Korea. It's all fake. The government's doing this so they can sell off their stocks. That one seems a little bit believable to me. Or not the government, but members of Congress. Here we go. We're getting into 820 AM WCPT. Yeah, we got WCPT, Progressive Talk Radio, coming to you live from my basement. But talk to me about conspiracy theories. Someone I think you were posed with the question, is Mothman real? So I don't think you can verify the existence of Mothman, but in terms of how do you see conspiracy theories playing into some of these same ideas?
Sure, that's a good question. So I think that we, as human beings, right, and I'm again, I guess I'm drawing on both of the disciplines I teach right now. Our brains, because our brains are so much more. Our brains, the brain that every single person listening to this has in their head right now, are infinitely more sophisticated than like 99.9% of the brains that have ever existed in life.
Like humans too.
Yes.
So like my grandma,
yeah.
My grandma is not as smart as me.
Maybe not. That's
my
like
great grandma.
I think so. If you go back, this is really long view history, right? For the vast majority of our species history, meaning like Homo sapiens, right? Like organisms that looked like us, more or less. They were a little bit hairier and a little bit shorter back in.
My grandma's pretty hairy. Sorry, Grandma.
Yeah. So for most of we went a few millennia ago, right? Like maybe I think it's like 60 million years ago. The fact checkers can get me on that. But our brains like evolved to a point where we can do really high level thinking. That's what separates us from every other animal, right? But that's actually, in the grand scheme of things, a very small percentage of like the lifespan of our species, right? The lifespan of Homo sapiens being alive. So for everything before that, there wasn't much that differentiated our species from monkeys. So since then, right, we've continued. Our brains have, we get sharper, we learn more as a species, and so we have the benefit of all that knowledge way more than we ever have had before, right? With all that being said, your brain being so sophisticated, your brain wants to make sense of the world around you. Right? Your brain, all of our brains don't do well with uncertainty, with confusion, with not understanding things why they are. Not understanding why things are.
Right.
That's why you come up with questions. So one of the ways, probably the primary way in which human beings make sense of their world is to tell stories. And that in the discipline that I teach most of my day, history, right? The word story is in that word, right? The root of that word. And so we tell stories. Yeah, so we tell stories to make sense of our world around us, to make sense of the past, to figure out who we are, etc. And so when we face something that is really hard for us to grapple with, like, for example, the existence of this pandemic threat that is really like going to pose this massive catastrophe, it's a normal human reaction to want to tell a story about it, right? And our brains, especially now, we live in this age of Marvel and binge watching TV.
Don't forget DC. Don't forget
Yeah,
DC.
sure. DC, okay. Our brains are built to want want dramatic stories, right? Crazy stories. Like you mentioned House of Cards earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like I worked in politics. House of Cards is nothing like how politics.
I thought it was a documentary.
No, but my boss never threw a reporter in front of a train. Spoiler alert.
What about binders? Did your boss throw any binders?
Not at me, at least.
Okay. You were a staffer.
Yeah, I was. But that's a more dramatic version of what's actually happening in politics, right?
Okay.
If you actually watched C-SPAN, which is the closed circuit TV of what's going on Capitol Hill,
mm-hmm.
It's really boring, right? It would be no one would want to watch that for entertainment. So we want to be entertained and activated. So that's, I think, part of why conspiracy theories come up, in addition to our need to just be able to understand our world in some way.
So Mothman does not exist.
You know what? I can't speak to it for sure, Mr. Buse. I would say more likely than not, Mothman does not.
Sounds like you're hiding something from us. All right. Well, thank you for that very illuminating stuff. I'm going to move on to the portion of our show where I'm going to ask you 3 different questions. And this, sure. I'm calling this the portion of the show like this has been the same every time. These 3 times it's always been different. But first question, got to ask, obviously lots of free time. What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching?
Okay, reading. I'm reading 2 books right now. I have them with me.
2 books.
They are very different, all right? The first one is El Norte. The epic, if you can't see the subhead, the epic and forgotten story of Hispanic North America.
Put it right in front of your face. There you go.
Ooh, right there.
Perfect.
El Norte. So it's really interesting. It's a lot of history that I already knew because I know a lot about United States history. That's a subject I teach, but it's all telling it from the perspective of Mexico and Cuba and Puerto Rico and all of the different parts of the Hispanic world, I guess you could say, starting with Columbus's arrival and Spain controlling much of what is now our country. So I'm learning a lot from it, and it's giving me a lot of I'm really excited to start thinking about how I can incorporate some of it in my U.S. history class.
Look out, freshmen.
Yeah, look out, freshmen, because it's coming. Sooner or later, it will get to you. And then the second book I'm reading, it's not school appropriate, but I'm going to recommend it anyway.
Hey, there we go.
So I'm reading the book Homie by Danez Smith.
Yeah, great poet.
So my favorite poet, and this is a collection of poems. Their first collection of poems, Don't Call Us Dead. I know that many of the English teachers at Solorio have on their shelves.
Right.
And that's my all-time favorite collection of poems. Very dark, dealing with police violence and racism. And so Danez Smith is a queer black person who is also HIV positive, and so it's dealing with their HIV diagnosis and living with that. So it's very heavy. This one is still really good poems, but it's all about friendship and celebrating the people in your life who you love. So it's a little bit lighter and enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
In this especially.
And I think I'll go ahead. I'll drop one of their poems into the comments or into the description, because I know their poetry's all over YouTube too.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. And then you said, okay, watching and listening to, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Watching. So I have access to a Disney Plus account.
Oh, there we go.
So through a family member of my partner's. And so I have been watching all the Star Wars content that I have missed. So right now I'm watching Clone Wars, the TV show. It's an animated. I think it originally ran, I think, on the Disney Channel.
Yes.
Very good.
I've got that recommendation from quite a few students. I was thinking, I'm thinking, I wait 5 or 6 years and then I watch that all over summer with my daughter. I'm thinking I'm going to hold off and then be like, smart. here's your first introduction to Star Wars. Because that is a question of do I start her with episode 1? Do I really want her seeing Jar Jar Binks first, or do I do A New Hope? But then if I do that, then she goes to preschool and someone brings up Jar Jar. It's complicated. So I think Clone Wars, I think that seems like a pretty safe place to start.
Yeah, that's those are the difficulties of parenthood.
Yes. Yes.
Indeed.
Keeps me up at night.
Yeah, so I'm watching that, so I'd recommend that, and then listening to, huh?
I mean, you've got headphones in right now. I'm assuming there's something playing.
Just your voice,
Joking.
interviews. What am I listening to? Music wise, I'm listening to the Jay Electronica album that just came out. I've been listening to. He's a rapper. It's okay. I
Ooh.
really like. It came out a little bit before school was canceled. Tame Impala's new album.
Yes.
I really enjoy. Very groovy, very dancey.
Groovy. You heard it. Mr. Barnett loves the groovy stuff.
I love the groovy stuff. I love the groovy stuff. So I'm listening to that, and I'm also listening to. I'm trying to keep my brain active by listening to a lot of podcasts too.
Great.
Especially, I'm trying to listen to podcasts about the news, but also podcasts that like don't mention the word coronavirus anywhere in them. So stuff about TV, movies, that kind of thing.
Great. All right. So our Ask Science question today is actually being changed. I'm just getting this in from my producer.
Okay.
Want to do that? Okay. Do you have a pen? Do you have a pen and paper near you, or a pencil and paper near you?
I got a pen. I can. Here, I'll write on one of these paper towels.
There we go. Perfect. All right. Here's your challenge.
Yeah.
You've got 15 seconds.
Okay.
I will say 30 seconds. You've got 30 seconds to draw a pig. Go.
Oh God. Okay.
All right, so, and while I'm doing this, you need to tell me about your art training.
I have no art training other than when I was a kid, we had a art school in my hometown called Kaleidoscope. And so my mom would make me go to Kaleidoscope and learn I made like a ceramic monkey one time holding a banana.
30 seconds.
That's done?
Show it.
All right. Here we go.
You're lying. You did not go to Kaleidoscope. There's. All right. What's that? Who's the winner? My producer's saying that I'm the winner on this one. Thank you for your Ask Art challenge. Okay. Last thing. Yesterday, Miss Bacamini and I couldn't come up with a question to pass on to you. But what question do you want to pass on to the next person on the show, and to the students out there who may be listening to this, made it through this interview? Or a challenge, one of the two.
What do I want to pass on as a question? Good question. So I did an AMA on Google Classroom yesterday. It's actually ongoing.
And that's an Ask Me Anything, right?
An Ask Me Anything, like on Reddit, yeah. With my students, they had some good questions. I had a good question that I had, which is applicable, is a lot of people are asking for like recs on TV or movies or everything, but my favorite question was, what games should I play? So like, what games are getting you through this? Because I enjoy a game.
Great. And what's your answer for that?
I said my favorite, a nice easy game, because we're all limited in terms of like, talking to each other, right? Heads up or categories, like that kind of thing is great. If you can, my favorite board game is Settlers of Catan, so there's a digital version of that you can play as well. Fun stuff.
I think maybe you'll have to get a game of Heads Up going with the next person on the show.
Absolutely.
There we go. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Mr. Barnett, for being on the show. It was wonderful. Don't hang up. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Alrighty.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Barnett. What a great interview. Sorry that you had to lose the pig drawing contest. Anyways, today's shout out goes to Angel S, who told me that my wall's pretty boring. Thanks, Angel. If you'd like to have some more interesting stuff on the wall, viewers, donate to my Patreon. I'm kidding. I don't have a Patreon. I'll try to get something else up there, except I think it looks pretty decent. Anyways, thanks for being here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay sharp, keep reading, keep those pencils going, and stay safe out there. Signing off for now, this is Mr. Buse.